Hi, this is Kristen from the Ocean Beach Library, and I'm here to talk to you today about Chinese calligraphy and how to get started learning Chinese calligraphy. The first thing you need to know is that it's very easy. You do not have to know the Chinese language to learn Chinese calligraphy. Chinese calligraphy is a form of art like brush painting in the Japanese tradition or the Chinese tradition. Chinese calligraphy is something that can be recognized throughout the world. It's a great way to connect with other countries and people from throughout Asia, because people from throughout Asia will recognize a Chinese character and they will really appreciate your effort in learning this exciting form of art. Now, the first thing I want to tell you, besides the fact that you don't have to know Chinese, is that it is good to know the meaning of the character when you practice Chinese calligraphy. However, we're not going to get into that because you can find that out online or on a dictionary. There is a document with some handouts attached to this video all about how to learn more about where to find good Chinese character examples for calligraphy and things like that. Right now, I want to show you some of the fun stuff that you can play with when you're learning Chinese calligraphy. Check this out. Does anybody know what it is? It has a groove here and sort of a little area here. You fill this area with water and you take one of these guys, an ink stone, and you use the ink stone, and with just a little bit of water you slide the water up here and you make a pool of your own ink. If you were learning Chinese calligraphy the traditional way, which I highly encourage you to do, because from the beginning, as you learn to make your own ink from an ink stone and one of these little guys, and as you learn to make the ink the right way, you're also meditating. You're breathing in and out, and it brings you a peace of mind. It helps you achieve the right kind of what we call qi. It's like the spirit, the breathing within you, so that you're in the right mental state to create the perfect Chinese character. I wanted to show you these things because you see these a lot in art supply stores. And there's more that you would see. Here is an example of another thing you might see. These rods, they hold the paper down. You're also going to see lots of brushes. Here are some of the ones I've used in the past, or you might say I've abused them in the past. For the most part, the brushes come in three sizes: a large size, a medium size, and a small size. And here is another example of a newly purchased set of brushes that are supposed to be large, medium, and small. And here are just a couple more things you might see. This is a felt mat. When you're working traditionally with Chinese calligraphy or brush painting, you will have a felt mat that absorbs some of the excess water and ink that seeps under the papers that you use. And there are lots of papers you use. This is one of the more popular kinds. See how it has a grid on it? And if you look closely within the grid, I don't know if you can see it in this light, but within the grid there are little grids. That's because you can practice small Chinese characters using a small brush, or you can practice a larger Chinese character using a large brush, because one of the qualities that you look for in a good Chinese character is that it's centered in a square. That square doesn't have to be in your final work, but when you're practicing, this kind of paper comes in handy. See how lightweight it is? This paper is designed to absorb the ink in a certain way, kind of like you look for paper in the art supply store. You can get this online if you want. I'm going to show you how to write one Chinese character and how that Chinese character with another character added to it creates a new Chinese character. We're basically going to practice learning 3 Chinese characters together. All right, and all we're going to use is newsprint and a Sharpie, because when you get down to it, you can buy fancy brush pens at the art supply store, though sometimes it's kind of hard to find one that has the delicate tip that's just soft enough to use for Chinese calligraphy. Some of them are designed for maybe English calligraphy or other works. Well, anyway, you can find those things at the store, but when you're learning Chinese calligraphy for the first time, all you really need is a felt tip pen, because a felt tip pen is going to be absorbed by the paper in the same way that a brush would be absorbed by the paper, and you're practicing some of the same things. Now, what are those things that you're practicing when you're doing Chinese calligraphy? Well, the two most important things in learning Chinese calligraphy are that the Chinese character, which is a whole word, believe it or not, is centered and it has symmetry, and it's balanced, and you learn to look for those things. And there are lots of tools online, and you'll see some of those in my handout. You are also going to learn that there's a stroke order to everything that you write. For example, if I were to draw this Chinese character, you see the little dot there? Without the dot, it means water. But with the dot actually represents ice. And with the dot, the whole character means ice. But people use this character a lot to teach Chinese calligraphy because it has all of the major strokes. Just like when we're learning the letters of the alphabet, when you're practicing Chinese characters, you learn how to draw each of these strokes properly. And you have to draw them in a certain order. And that's what I'm going to teach you now. Oh, and by the way, you can get liquid ink so that you don't have to make your own ink with an ink block. That's another way of practicing calligraphy. But let's get started, because we got to be quick about this, right? All right, so here's a piece of newsprint. I'm going to imagine a square here. See, I'm just using a Sharpie, but notice how if I hold the Sharpie down, it kind of makes a blot on the newsprint. And if I use the Sharpie really quickly, you can kind of see the tip of the felt tip pen with the Sharpie. Those are the same kind of things that you're dealing with when you're dealing with the use of brush, if you were using paint brushes for Chinese calligraphy. All right, so I just made a square for you because it's always nice to make a square for yourself, and there's a way to do it, or you can download a printout with the squares pre-printed for you when you're practicing for the first time. And I'm going to draw the character for sun. Now, in the history of Chinese writing, the sun was originally written just like that, kind of the way it looks. And eventually, they started squiggling it, and this is what it turned into. Now notice, I'm going to follow the rules of Chinese calligraphy. From left to right is one of the rules. So I start on the left, and from top to bottom is another rule. Also, another rule is you want everything to look natural, and you never want any line to look exactly like another line. Now, those of you who are professional calligraphers will notice that I've kind of tilted my character a bit because of the position, and it's not the best character. For this size ink pen, I might go as small as that. But this is the sun. Now, I'm going to do it one more time for you. From left to right, up to down. I fill anything in the middle of a square before closing the square. Another thing that I'm not supposed to do is no right angles. That's what I was trying to do here. So I'm going to do it a little bit more quickly because it's a little bit easier for me to write my characters when I'm not thinking. And I'll even do it more quickly like that. So that is the character for the sun. Now, let's move over here and do another character. Again, I'll give you a square. Notice how easy this is. We know that this means the sun. We don't have to know how to say sentences out loud using the sun. We don't have to learn the whole language to really enjoy the art of Chinese calligraphy. And here's another character for you. For those of you who know a little Chinese, see if you can recognize it for me. What do you think? I'll give you the origin of this character. It looked like this. And eventually they started drawing the character with a line in it like that. And then eventually it came out like that. That is the moon, ladies and gentlemen. The character for the moon. So I just taught you 2 characters. Again, I went from left to right, and I filled in the center before closing the square. And in this case, I didn't have to close the square. Now, everything is a little bit tilted because my examples and my camera are kind of tilted. But now what happens if you put the sun and the moon together? That's a 3rd character for you to learn. And here we go. As one character, you have to bring them very close together to show that they are one character, not 2. For example, if I did this, and then I went on and I went like this, people would think that these are separate words. And we don't want that. When we want the sun and the moon together to create a new word, we have to put them really close together. And so let's try that again. We're doing 2 characters. 95% of Chinese languages, just like this. There is an element on the left, an element on the right. The element on the left indicates the meaning of the whole character. And the element on the right might add to that meaning, or it might help you decide how to pronounce it. In this case, the result is the word for bright or brightness. Because when you put the sun next to the moon, you end up with a much brighter moon. There are many other examples of this. For example, that 95% of characters I was talking about. Let's look at this one. By itself, that doesn't really make a character, but that means a rain cloud. And if I put a field under it, that means thunder. And did you see how I wrote the character? From left to right, from top to bottom. I tried to avoid right angles. I tried to see all these little slashes here. I didn't want them to be exactly the same. I wanted them to be very natural looking. And if you just want to get started and you want to have fun, take a look at the handouts that I was giving you and give it a shot. See what you can do yourself. You can learn a lot just by imitation. So that pretty much sums up everything that I wanted to tell you about getting started learning Chinese calligraphy. It's very simple. There are lots of other things that you can know about the whole practice, and depending on whether or not you find a teacher, you might end up learning something completely different from what I've taught you. For example, someone who specializes in teaching Japanese brush painting might ask you to apply a lot more traditions from Japanese brush painting toward Chinese calligraphy than someone who has a background in Chinese calligraphy. A professional Chinese calligrapher has to seek an apprenticeship. They start at a very young age. It takes them about 20 to 30 years of practice to write one of those characters that you can barely recognize that people hang on a wall. However, there's always a system to Chinese characters, and it's really exciting to learn about how they work. For example, 95% of the characters are like this, or like this. This, by the way, I don't know if you could tell, but this is tree. You put 2 trees together, you've got a forest. You put 3 trees together, you get a heavily wooded area. There are lots of characters like that that are really fun to learn, and when you learn those parts of the characters, and when you get the hang of breathing properly and practicing Chinese calligraphy, you find that, well, there's just a lot that you learn about yourself, and there's a lot that you can share with others. All right, so that was in a nutshell, how to get started learning Chinese calligraphy, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. I'm sorry I didn't break out the paintbrushes in the water. If you join us next year for the How-To Festival, hopefully we'll have it in person, and I'll give you a chance to do what I've done in the past, where everybody gets to make their own ink and use paintbrushes. But don't forget, you can always use a Sharpie and some newsprint and some of the resources that are in the handout to learn Chinese calligraphy right away. And it's a great way to achieve equanimity in your life. You can do it for the same time of day, every day. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you're having some great time out there learning more from the How-To Festival. And I'll see you the next time I see you at the Ocean Beach Library. Happy reading and happy learning. Bye-bye.